It always begins in silence. That uncomfortable pause when you're alone and the world around you goes still. No music, no noise, just the sound of your own thoughts whispering the same old stories. You're not enough. You'll never change. You don't deserve better. For most people, this is where they stop listening. But for those who dare to stay, to face those whispers instead of running from them, that's where the journey begins. Louise Hay believed that everything we experience, every pain, every illness, every heartbreak, begins with what we believe about ourselves. She called the mind the stage upon which the story of our life unfolds, and the body the instrument that reveals what's truly going on inside. Most people try to fix the world, the relationships, the money, the health, without ever touching the roots beneath. But Louise would smile gently and say, "You don't fix your life, you heal your thoughts. The rest will follow." Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that your thoughts have been sculpting your reality all along. Every "I can't" became a wall. Every "I'm not good enough" became an illness. Every "I'm scared" became a chain. We spend years repeating these phrases until they harden into beliefs. Beliefs that whisper from childhood memories, from teachers, from parents who once said, "You're difficult, you're slow, you're not like the others." Those words became invisible tattoos on our souls, and we carry them into adulthood like heavy armor. But here's the truth Louise wanted us to see. What was learned can be unlearned. What was believed can be released. She often began with a mirror, simple, quiet, disarming. "Look into your eyes," she would say, and say, "I love you. I really love you." The first time it feels ridiculous, maybe even painful. You might laugh nervously or feel a tear rise for reasons you can't name. But beneath that discomfort is something sacred. The moment your heart realizes it's been waiting for your own love all along. Louise called this the mirror work, and it was more than an exercise. It was a doorway. The mirror shows not your face, but your beliefs. The fear of being unworthy, the ache of wanting approval, the guilt of never feeling enough. When you finally meet your own reflection with compassion instead of criticism, the healing begins. We've been trained to search for love from others, from a partner, a parent, the world. But the love we seek cannot come from outside because it's meant to be born inside. If you want others to love you, you must first love yourself. It sounds simple, maybe too simple, until you realize how much resistance lives inside that one idea. The mind argues, "But I failed, but I've been hurt, but I don't deserve it." Yet every "but" is a belief, and every belief can be rewritten. The moment you choose to love yourself, not because of what you've done, but despite it, life starts to rearrange itself. The body begins to heal. The people around you change. Opportunities appear where there were none. It's as if the universe had been waiting for you to say, "Yes, I am worthy." And yet most people stop right before that moment. They get close to love, then pull away. They start to forgive, then remember the pain. They want to heal, but something inside whispers, "What if I don't deserve it?" Louise understood that whisper well. She had lived through abuse, poverty, rejection. She had walked through fire and found peace not by escaping her past, but by transforming the meaning she gave it. The pain that once broke her became her teacher, and that's what she wanted for us, to stop running from our stories and instead look them in the eye with love. Because when you finally stop fighting yourself, something changes. The mirror doesn't just show your reflection anymore, it shows your potential. That scared, small version of you begins to soften, realizing it was only trying to protect you all along. You see that every wound was once a wish for love, every mistake a cry for understanding. And the very moment you decide to stop blaming yourself, your inner world begins to move. The first truth of healing, Louise said, is this: the point of power is always in the present moment, not in the past that hurt you, not in the future that scares you, but right here, in the breath you are taking now. The present is where all healing begins because it's the only place where change can happen. You can't rewrite yesterday, but you can forgive it. You can't control tomorrow, but you can prepare it with love. The question is, will you? Because love is not an emotion, it's a choice, a daily, deliberate act of turning inward when the world tells you to look out, of whispering to yourself in the mirror, I am enough, until you believe it not just with your lips, but with your soul. The journey begins there, in the silence, in the mirror, in the first fragile moment when you decide to believe that healing is possible. And yet, as the old thoughts begin to crumble, the mind grows restless. If love is the cure, then why do we cling to pain? Why do we keep repeating the same patterns that hurt us? Why does freedom feel so frightening? Louise would say it's because, deep down, we've built an identity out of our suffering. We've mistaken the cage for the home. To step out of it means to let go, and the mind fears what it doesn't know. But what if letting go isn't losing? What if it's remembering? Remembering who you were before the fear, before the guilt, before the story of not being enough. In that remembering lies the real miracle, the one that can heal not just your mind, but your life. And that's where the next chapter begins, with a single question echoing in the stillness. If your thoughts create your reality, what happens when you finally learn to love them? It begins subtly. The realization that your thoughts are not harmless. They are seeds, each one carrying the power to grow into something real. Some become flowers of peace, others become weeds of pain. For years, we've been planting without noticing. We've thought in fear, spoken in doubt, and lived in patterns so old they've become invisible. Louise Hay used to say, "Every thought we think is creating our future." At first, this feels poetic until you realize it's not poetry at all. It's law. Your life is a mirror reflecting your inner dialogue. Change your words, change your beliefs, and the reflection must change too. But the question is, how do you rewrite something you've been repeating all your life? The mind doesn't like change. It clings to the familiar, even when the familiar hurts. Imagine a person who has always believed, I'm not good enough. That thought becomes a quiet rhythm behind everything they do. The reason they don't apply for the job, don't ask for love, don't stand up for themselves. They call it being realistic, but it's not realism, it's programming. Somewhere in childhood, maybe when a parent said, you'll never amount to much, or when the world rewarded silence more than courage, the mind took that message and carved it into stone. And now, even as an adult, that stone weighs heavy in their pocket. Louise believed that we all carried those stones, beliefs buried so deep they seem like truth. But they are not truth. They are decisions we made long ago, and what was decided can always be undecided. She taught something revolutionary, that affirmations are the language of the soul learning to speak again. An affirmation isn't just a pretty sentence, it's a declaration of new truth. When you say, I am worthy of love, you're not pretending, you're reprogramming. You're teaching your subconscious a new story, one powerful enough to replace the old one. But affirmations don't work through magic, they work through repetition. The same way fear was learned word by word, thought by thought, love must also be learned, gently, patiently, consistently. When you catch yourself thinking, I'll never heal, you don't fight it, you replace it. I am healing now. When you think, I'm broken, you whisper, I am whole. The old mind will resist at first, it will laugh, doubt, argue, but you keep going. Because each time you choose the new thought, you're planting a seed in soil that has been long neglected. And one day, that seed becomes stronger than the weeds. But here's the secret Louise often revealed to her students. Affirmations alone are not enough if you don't believe you deserve what you're asking for. Self-worth is the foundation. Without it, the house of healing crumbles. Think about it. How can love reach you if you've built walls around your heart? How can abundance find you if you believe you're unworthy of it?
Every blessing the universe tries to send bounces off the armor of "I'm not enough." Louise would look at her audience and say softly, "You have been criticizing yourself for years, and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." And the room would fall silent, because everyone could feel the truth of it. We have spent so long trying to earn love by being perfect that we forgot we were lovable already. In her workshops, she would guide people through powerful visualizations. "Imagine your inner child," she'd say. "That small, tender version of you who still believes in magic, who still feels every wound deeply. Look into their eyes. Tell them, you are safe now. You are loved. You are enough." For many, this moment would unlock tears they'd been holding for decades, because for the first time, someone was giving them permission to love the parts they had always hidden. That's the real essence of healing. Not becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before the world told you otherwise. It's easy to think healing is about becoming stronger, but Louise taught that it's really about becoming softer. When you let go of self-judgment, the world softens with you. People treat you differently. Life stops being a battlefield and starts becoming a mirror of compassion. It's not that problems disappear, it's that your relationship to them changes. You begin to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" And in that shift of perception, power returns to you. But here's where the journey turns. Once you start changing your thoughts, you'll notice something unexpected. The outer world might resist. Old friends might question your positivity. Family might laugh at your new mindset. The mind might panic and whisper, "This isn't working." That's the test. When the old life begins to crumble, it means the new one is forming. The discomfort you feel isn't failure, it's transformation. You're not losing control, you're regaining it. Louise would often say, "Life supports you in every thought you choose to think." So, if you think in love, life must respond with love. If you think in fear, life must reflect fear. The universe is neutral. It simply mirrors what you believe. That realization can be terrifying or liberating, depending on which thoughts you choose next. And that's where many people stop, on the edge of transformation, too scared to take the final step. Because what happens when you truly start to believe you deserve happiness? What happens when you stop identifying with pain? The old self trembles. The identity built on struggle begins to fade. And in that fading comes fear. The fear of the unknown, of the blank space where suffering used to live. But in that space lies freedom. Freedom to create, to love, to exist without apology. And yet one question always lingers in the heart of every person who begins this work. If our thoughts can heal our lives, then why do we still feel pain? Why do the old memories still hurt, even after we've forgiven, affirmed, and let go? What is the mind still trying to show us? Louise had an answer, one that would take her students deeper than they'd ever gone before. You can't heal what you refuse to feel. And that's where we'll go next. Into the tender space where pain becomes the teacher and feeling becomes the doorway to freedom.
There's a reason the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. It stores the stories we refuse to face, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the unspoken anger that we swallow with a smile. Each emotion we bury doesn't vanish. It finds a home somewhere inside us. Louise Hay believed that every illness begins as a whisper of the soul, a message gentle at first, asking to be heard. If ignored, that whisper grows louder, turning into discomfort, then pain, then disease. The body, she said, is always talking to us. We just need to learn how to listen. And when you begin to listen, really listen, you realize that your body isn't your enemy, it's your oldest friend, trying to show you where you stopped loving yourself. Imagine a woman named Sarah, kind, hardworking, always taking care of everyone else. She never complains, never says no, even when she's exhausted. For years, she tells herself she's fine, until one day, she develops a pain in her lower back that won't go away. Doctors can't find anything wrong.
But when she sits quietly with herself, she hears an old truth rise from within. I'm tired of carrying everyone's burden. Her back had been whispering what her voice was afraid to say. Louise would look at that pain and say, the back represents support. When we feel unsupported by life, the back speaks. In that moment, Sarah realized her body wasn't punishing her. It was pleading for her to let go. Each part of the body speaks its own emotional language. The throat holds unspoken words. The heart carries old grief. The stomach digests not just food, but experience. And when life feels indigestible, we feel it there. Our bodies translate our thoughts into sensations, asking us to pay attention. But in a world that glorifies productivity and hides vulnerability, we learn to numb instead of feel. We take pills, distractions, endless busyness, anything to avoid sitting with pain. But Louise's message was different. Don't run, feel, because to feel is to heal. She used to tell her audiences, when we accept and love ourselves, everything in life flows. It sounds miraculous, and it is, but not because of magic. When we love ourselves, we stop fighting what is. We stop labeling our emotions as bad or weak. We start seeing anger as a boundary we ignored, sadness as a goodbye we never said, fear as a child asking for reassurance. Every feeling becomes a messenger, not a monster. And when you allow those feelings to move through you, they no longer need to stay trapped inside your body. The energy of suppression transforms into the energy of expression, and that's when the body begins to heal. Louise's own life was proof of this truth. When she was diagnosed with cancer, she didn't see it as a death sentence. She saw it as her body crying for love. She refused to see herself as a victim. Instead, she asked, what is this illness trying to teach me? Through meditation, affirmations, forgiveness, and deep emotional release, she allowed her body to unlearn years of resentment and shame, and slowly, miraculously, she healed. Her message wasn't that medicine doesn't work. It's that healing works best when the mind and body work together. Because even the most advanced treatment can't cure a body that still believes it deserves pain. Think about your own life for a moment. The tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your chest, the headaches, the fatigue. What if they aren't random? What if they're messages from the parts of you that are still waiting to be heard? What if every ache is an emotion asking to be acknowledged? Most people silence these messages with distraction, but you, now aware, can do something different. You can pause, breathe, and ask, what are you trying to tell me? That question alone begins the conversation that most people never have, the conversation with their own soul. But there's a deeper truth here, one that shakes the foundation of everything we've been taught. Healing doesn't happen by fighting the darkness. It happens by bringing light to it. We've been taught to resist pain, to label it as failure. But Louise would smile and say, what we resist persists. What we accept transforms. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means giving love to what's hurting. When you stop resisting pain, it softens. When you hold your fear instead of running from it, it dissolves. The war inside you ends the moment you stop choosing sides. And yet this part of the journey isn't easy. When you start feeling what you've avoided for years, emotions rise like a storm, memories, guilt, tears you didn't know you still had. The mind will panic, whispering, this is too much, I can't handle it. But you can. The heart is far stronger than it seems. You are not breaking down, you are breaking open. You're creating space where light can finally enter. Still, many people ask, why would we create illness for ourselves? Why would anyone choose pain? Louise's answer was simple. We don't choose it consciously. We create it through ignorance, through not knowing how powerful we are. When we learn to see ourselves as victims of life, we hand away our power. But when we understand that every experience, even the painful ones, can be a teacher, we reclaim it. Life stops happening to us and starts happening for us. That shift, from blame to understanding, is the heartbeat of healing. And so the next step is forgiveness, the medicine of the soul. Forgiveness not as a favor to others, but as freedom for yourself. Because how can the heart heal if it's still holding the weight of the past? How can new love enter a space still filled with old pain? Louise would often say, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and realize the prisoner was you. Forgiveness. It's a word that sounds peaceful but feels impossible. We talk about it like it's a virtue, yet deep inside, most of us resist it with every breath. Because forgiveness, at its core, means releasing the pain we've used to define ourselves. It means letting go of the story that says, they hurt me, and that's why I am the way I am. For years, we carry those stories like sacred scars, thinking they protect us from being hurt again. But Louise Hay knew a different truth, that holding on doesn't protect us, it poisons us. We are never free, she said, until we forgive. And forgiveness doesn't begin with the person who hurt you. It begins with the one who was hurt, you. Think about someone who wronged you. Maybe it was a parent who didn't love you the way you needed, a friend who betrayed you, a lover who left without explanation. The memory still lives inside you, maybe buried, maybe fresh. You tell yourself you've moved on, but your body remembers. The tightness in your chest, the bitterness that flares when their name is mentioned. That's not weakness. That's an emotional wound asking to be cleaned. And forgiveness is the cleansing. But it's not about excusing what happened. It's about choosing peace over poison. It's about saying, I won't let your pain define my story anymore. Louise often said, we are all doing the best we can with the understanding, awareness, and knowledge we have. At first, that sentence feels infuriating. How could someone's cruelty be their best? But when you look deeper, you see what she meant. The people who hurt us are often acting from their own unhealed pain. A parent who criticizes might have been raised by one who did worse. A lover who leaves might never have been taught how to stay. A friend who lies might have learned that truth was never safe. This doesn't make their actions right. It makes them human. And when we start to see the wounded child inside the person who hurt us, something shifts. The walls inside our hearts begin to crack, just enough for light to enter. Forgiveness is not a single act. It's a process, sometimes slow, always sacred. Louise would tell people, start where you are. You don't have to feel loving to forgive. You only have to be willing. Willingness is the key that opens the door to healing. You might begin by saying, I am willing to forgive. Even if you don't mean it fully, say it anyway. The words plant a seed in your subconscious, and the universe always responds to willingness. One day, that willingness becomes peace. But there's a deeper kind of forgiveness, the one that takes the most courage, forgiving yourself. For every mistake, every poor choice, every time you said yes when you meant no. We're taught to be kind to others, but we are merciless with ourselves. We replay regrets like movies, punishing ourselves for not knowing better, as if perfection were the price of love. But Louise would remind us gently, you have done the best you could with the understanding you had. That's not a justification, it's compassion. You can't evolve while still carrying the weight of self-hatred. When you forgive yourself, you're telling the universe, I'm ready to move forward. In one of her workshops, Louise told a story about a man who had been abused by his father. He carried that anger for 40 years, unable to forgive. He doesn't deserve it, he said. Louise looked at him with eyes full of softness and said, you're right, he doesn't, but you do. That moment changed him. Forgiveness wasn't about the father anymore. It was about freeing himself from decades of pain. And that's what forgiveness does. It cuts the cords that keep you tied to suffering. You're not denying what happened. You're choosing not to let it own you anymore. Still, forgiveness doesn't come overnight. Some days you'll feel peace. Other days the anger will return, raw and loud. Don't fight it. Healing moves in waves. Each time the pain resurfaces, it's an invitation to go deeper, to love yourself through another layer of release. Eventually, the pain that once felt endless becomes just a memory, not a wound, not a trigger, just a story you outgrew. And as forgiveness takes root, something miraculous begins to happen. the heart feels lighter, the body relaxes. Life starts to respond differently, not because the world changed, but because your energy did. You begin to notice beauty where you once saw pain. You attract kindness where there used to be conflict. The outer world mirrors the inner peace you've begun to cultivate. This is the hidden alchemy of forgiveness. It transforms your vibration and in doing so, transforms your life. But there's still one more layer Louise taught her students to explore, the energy of thought itself. Because forgiveness clears the past, but true transformation happens when you start consciously creating your future. Once you've let go of resentment, you become a blank canvas again. The question then becomes, what do you want to paint? The mind once filled with anger now has space for possibility. And that's where we move next, into the art of affirmations, the conscious creation of a new reality through the language of love. Because once you've freed your heart from the past, the universe turns to you and asks softly, what will you choose to believe now?
There comes a moment, after the tears, after the release, when the air feels different, lighter, clearer, almost fragile in its quietness. This is the space forgiveness creates. It's an empty field after the storm, and for the first time, you realize you can plant anything you want. The question is, what will you grow here? Louise Hay called this the turning point, the moment when you stop reacting to life and begin creating it. Because forgiveness clears the soil, but affirmations plant the seeds. And those seeds, if tended with care, can transform not just your emotions, but your entire world. Louise believed that every thought is a command to the universe, a prayer that shapes reality whether we're conscious of it or not. Most people don't realize this. They affirm their fears without knowing. They say, I'm so unlucky. Nothing ever works out. I'll never find love. And the universe, always obedient, simply reflects it back. But once you understand that words are energy, that your thoughts are instructions to life itself, everything changes. You begin to speak differently, not out of superstition, but out of self-respect. You begin to think not as a victim, but as a creator. Louise would smile and say, your words are your wand. Use them wisely. Affirmations, at their core, are not just phrases, they are frequencies. They tune your mind to the vibration of love, abundance, and peace. But for them to work, they must come from the heart. You can't simply repeat words you don't believe. You must feel them, breathe them, embody them. That's why Louise always encouraged mirror work. When you look into your own eyes and say, I love you, you're not trying to convince your brain. You're trying to awaken your soul. The eyes are the gateway to the subconscious, and when you speak love into that reflection, it listens. It begins to soften the walls built from years of self-criticism. And slowly, you begin to believe that you truly are worthy of love, success, and joy. But at first, the mind will resist. It will argue, laugh, call it nonsense. That's because for decades it has been trained to think negatively. The old thoughts have roots. The new ones need time to grow. Louise compared it to cleaning a dirty room. She'd say, you can't do it in one sweep. You clean a little, dust a little, and soon it becomes a place you love to live in. That's what affirmations do. They clean the mental house, one loving thought at a time. Let's imagine you wake up one morning feeling anxious, worried about money, work, or love. The old you might start the day with panic, spiraling into thoughts of scarcity. But the new you pauses. You take a breath and say, I am safe. Life supports me in every way. At first, it feels mechanical, almost false, but as you repeat it, something shifts. The words begin to carve new grooves in your mind, new pathways of trust, and that trust changes how you move through the day. You walk a little lighter. You speak with more confidence. You start noticing opportunities you used to overlook. It's not luck, it's alignment. The outer world mirrors your new inner state. Affirmations are most powerful when paired with emotion. The feeling behind the words is what gives them life. Saying, I'm worthy without feeling it, is like planting seeds in dry soil.
But when you say it with even a spark of belief, the energy begins to move. Louise encouraged people to act as if the affirmation were already true. She'd say, "Fake it till you make it," not to deceive yourself, but to teach your subconscious what to expect. Because the subconscious doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. It simply follows your emotional focus. So when you think loving thoughts, your body relaxes, your mind clears, and life begins to mirror that peace back to you. And slowly, something beautiful happens. You start to fall in love, not with someone else, but with life itself. The small things become sacred again: sunlight through the window, laughter on the street, the taste of morning coffee. Gratitude replaces worry. You stop chasing happiness because you realized it was never missing. You had only forgotten how to see it. Affirmations practiced daily become the rhythm of this new awareness. I am loved. I am whole. I am connected to life. Each repetition reshapes the way you see yourself, and as you change, everything around you shifts in response. But Louise also warned that affirmations are not a way to avoid reality. They are a way to transform it. If you're struggling with illness, affirmations won't make you deny the pain. They'll help you remember your power to heal. If you're broke, they won't ignore your bills. They'll remind you that you're more than your circumstances. The purpose of affirmations is not to escape the present. It's to awaken your power within it. Because once you believe in your worth, you start taking actions that align with it. You eat better. You speak kindly to yourself. You stop settling for less. And in time, the outer reality catches up to the inner conviction. But still, affirmations alone can't carry the whole journey. There's a deeper element that Louise spoke of, one that gives your words their magic: faith. Without faith, affirmations are just sounds in the air. With faith, they are creation in motion. Faith is the bridge between what you see and what you believe. It's that quiet voice that whispers, "Keep going. It's working," even when nothing seems to have changed. And it's that faith, steady and patient, that turns words into miracles. But where does that faith come from? How do you trust life after it's hurt you so many times? How do you surrender control and still feel safe? These are the questions that test every heart on this path, because loving yourself is only the beginning. The next step is learning to trust life itself. And that's where we'll go next. Because once you've learned to love and forgive yourself, once you've begun to think in harmony with life, there comes a moment when life asks you to leap, to surrender your fears, and trust that the universe truly supports you. It's in that leap that transformation